No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. This is Outspoken, episode number 323. And today, we get to go in depth with one of the most interesting campaigners in the world. Billboard Chris. I know once you see the pictures, you will know exactly who I'm talking about. The Canadian father, Chris Elston, who has become one of the firebrands of the pro-female rights movement. He will be here to talk to us all about his activism today and why he has spent so much time in the United Kingdom, including attending Tommy Robinson's Uniting the Kingdom rally. Remember today, because we are broadcasting the special uncancelled interview, we won't have our after show or a vote for Greatest Britain or Union Jackass, but please do join our Substack community still, because we are back live with you on Monday. The address, www.outspoken.live. Really great place to join me, message me direct, and I love our community on there. And as I say, we are back live on Monday. But now, let's go. Billboard Chris is one of the most interesting activists in the world because he found international infamy, and let's be honest, Chris, a lot of enemies too, simply by walking around key cities all across the globe with a very simple message about trans extremism and the need to protect our sexes. In the UK, over the past couple of weeks, he has had some fascinating interactions. Watch.
You don't think I should report that someone just threw a glass bottle at me?
You can report whatever you want. It's definitely
And you call
wrong.
that propaganda?
You're using this now in your
Yeah,
in
as if they identify as trans. Yeah, she's not engaging.
Oh, well done, mate. That was a fault.
Police! Hey, police! Being a male is not a feat. It's just a biological reality. And it's ultimately based on the gametes that you're designed to produce.
So you would wear a skirt and a dress because you were still a male.
A man wearing a skirt and a dress is 100% man.
Hey, cool it, mate. Cool it.
Keep walking.
Glasgow, decade.
The cop's just up there.
Don't give the city a bad name.
So to all you neo-Nazis on Twitter, you're fake. You don't know what you're talking about. You want to blame everything on the Jews. Yet here I get nothing but support. That's the real world.
Find out that they have male parts and they have more testosterone than a normal female, that would then make them a male?
No, so it doesn't. So what makes you male or female is the gametes that you're designed to produce.
So, Billboard Chris, so fascinating that even here in the United Kingdom today, with the change I think that has happened and the positive change that has happened on so many levels, you are still under attack. You're under verbal attack. You're under physical attack. For what? Stating biological realities?
Yeah, so my campaign's all about protecting kids.
Yes.
From the abuse, the greatest child abuse scandal in the history of modern medicine, without a doubt. The practice of trying to change the sex of kids with puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries. There has been progress in the UK. In England, they have put a ban in place for puberty blockers for new patients. Existing kids are still getting them, and they still want to do a clinical trial, experimenting on children, which is totally insane. They can't do that ethically, and it's completely unnecessary because there's no such thing as a child born in the wrong body. Puberty is not a medical condition, and we should never be stopping it.
See, it's interesting to me that you think the UK is maybe a long way along the right road here, because I still don't think there has been any real reconciliation about what happened with the Tavistock Clinic, which is something that I think still shames the British health system.
And these kids are still getting these drugs. The existing patients are still getting them, and they still want to do it to more. And they didn't ban the cross-sex hormones in England. They did go a step further under the SNP in Scotland and ban them for new patients. But you have kids going to Spain or going to Dublin to get these drugs, so they need to legislate a ban in place, and they need to make it so that parents can't go shopping for medicine across borders either, because this is child abuse.
So let's go back to the start, okay? Because you're an ordinary dad
Yeah.
of 2 girls, is
That's
that
right.
right? And how old were they when this started?
When I started my campaign, they were 8 and 10. They're 13 and 15 now.
And did you see that this type of, I mean, how do you describe it, by the way? Extreme trans ideology or gender ideology? What definitions do you use?
Yeah, I call this gender ideology, the belief that some people were born in the wrong body.
I mean, some would call it a gender fantasy.
Yeah, I look at this essentially as a cult that has swept over the entire world, really, for sure the Western world, but this is going on in Eastern countries as well now. And this entire thing is based on a lie. There's no such thing as a transgender child. And when I first said that, that seemed to be a radical thing to say. But you know what? I've had tens of thousands of conversations out on the street. Nobody can tell you what it is. I say, what does it mean to be transgender? What does it mean for a girl to be a boy? Nobody can tell you. And ultimately, this just comes down to stereotypes. Stereotypes that the left would say are regressive and sexist. They would agree with my statement that there's no right or wrong way to be a girl or a boy. But then in their next breath, they say, well, this girl, she's more masculine. She likes boy toys and boy sports and boy clothes. So she must be a boy? What kind of absolute nonsense is this? This is one of the most insane things that human beings have ever done, trying to change the sex of children. We need to put a stop to it, but we need to go further. This ideology is the source of this evil, and we need to make it understood to the masses because they still have no idea what's going on.
100%. I mean, look, this one is very personal for me, actually, as a gay man, because I know that if I had been alive 2 decades later, right, as with this crazy gender ideology spreading, I just know, and I've spoken to my parents about it, and they said, don't worry, Dan, we would never have gone down that path. But I worry because I know there would have been a crazy woke teacher who confused the fact that I was clearly a young gay kid with the fact that I might want to be a woman. And I really worry about that. I really believe it would have been a possibility. And I also have a lot of lesbian friends who feel that exactly the same thing would have happened to them. So I feel this personally because I understand that I would have been at threat of being left in the wrong gender, of my body being effed up by this horrible ideology. So I feel this one very personally, but talk to me about your own experience of where the billboard came from. Were you worried that your own daughters were being pushed some type of gender ideology?
So I first learned...
Canada's mad. I mean, Canada is pretty woke and crazy in a lot of ways.
Yes, Canada is pushing this hard in every institution. Everything's captured. The judiciary's captured everything. But in 2019, I first came upon the term puberty blockers. Mm-hmm. And I was a financial advisor. I had a normal job. And I was just living my life, raising my kids, and I thought, well, what the heck are those? That doesn't sound good. And I've been paying attention to the world for a long time and didn't like a lot of things I see. So I looked up what puberty blockers are, and they are what they sound like. We're blocking the development of perfectly healthy children. This is a step too far. There's a lot of crazy going on. But now you're stopping the development of kids so they don't go into puberty. So girls' breasts won't grow, their hips won't get wider, boys' genitalia doesn't grow. This is causing bone demineralization. We have no idea a lot of the side effects because this has never been done in the history of the human race. This is a chemical castration drug given to sex offenders, pedophiles, to this day, to chemically castrate them. It was a drug designed for prostate cancer in men, endometriosis, and uterine fibroids in women, but it happens to stop puberty. So in the 90s in the Netherlands, they gave this to one girl. One doctor got this idea to this girl who was having distress about becoming a woman to stop her secondary sex characteristics from developing. And from that, the Dutch protocol was born. And in short order, this crazy practice of trying to change the sex of children has been exported to the entire world. And for me, my main job in the world is, of course, as a dad. And I started reading about this every day. And the more you read, the crazier this gets, truly. And I just decided I had to do something about it because I'm not sending my girls into this crazy world like this. We have to fix this. And a lot of the parents who are affected can't speak up because they risk alienating their child or getting in trouble with the state.
So it wasn't that there was any specific sign that your daughters were necessarily going to be targeted, but you wanted to almost take preemptive action. Is that fair to say?
Well, at first I wanted to learn all about it because anyone, especially children, are vulnerable to ideologies that come for them in school or whatever. So I wanted to learn all about it so I could protect my kids, educate my kids as well. But it got to a point, I wasn't worried about my kids. I just can't stand a world that's doing this to all these kids. And it's not a fringe thing. It's not 10 kids in this city. It's 1,000. It's hundreds of thousands of kids being harmed. Just a few weeks ago in the US, a report came out and over 700,000 children between 13 and 17 years of age now identify as trans or non-binary. Almost 1 million. This is completely out of hand.
Well, of course, I mean, you only have to look at how these numbers have exploded, included in the UK, by the way. And it is actually, interestingly, teenage girls who are the most vulnerable, teenage girls who are either lesbians, struggling with their sexuality, or struggling with their body development, which is something that happens a lot. But I'm really fascinated to know what made you come up with the concept, right? Where was the concept? Okay, I'm going to put this billboard, and remind me what your first billboard said.
So what happened in July of 2020 is Kelly J. Keane put up a sign at the Edinburgh train station that said, "I love JK Rowling." It had a heart on it. I heart JK Rowling. And some people on Twitter complained that it was hate speech. And so they took it down. And I'd been wanting to do something for a while. I'd been reading about this all year. And I just had enough. This is also about freedom of speech. We should be able to discuss anything in society. And when kids are coming to harm, we need to talk about that more. But now we can't even say we love the world's greatest children's author. And it so happened I was reading Harry Potter every night with my little one at bedtime. The best thing parents can ever do is read to their kids at night. And so I just had enough. So I put up a big billboard that said the same thing in Vancouver. It got taken down after one day.
No way.
Because a Vancouver politician, her name is Sarah Kirby Young, she said it was hate speech.
And it literally said, "I love JK Rowling."
That's all.
That was it.
That's it. Hate speech. Had a big red heart on it. And so she pressured the sign company to take it down, which they did. And so right away, I was somewhat prepared for this. I'd paid for 3 months with an option to extend. And I'd paid up front too. But I'm not going to let them silence me, right? This is a mission. And I have this mindset that no matter what gets in my way, I'm just going to go over it, under it, or through it. And so right away, I did a little fundraising campaign. And a week later, had the same billboard up in San Francisco, then Los Angeles, Portland, all throughout Utah, all throughout the metro in DC, and then Times Square. So that was my September of 2020. But then
and this was just grassroots fundraising because of the
yes,
because of the cancellation
and some of my own money, yes. And then I ran out of money. So, and in Canada, I can't do anything. And my vision is to start conversations because I have faith that people, parents especially, when they learn about this child abuse, for every 1,000 you educate, 2 or 3 are going to take up this challenge themselves, and they're going to work on solving it. And I had faith that together the doctors and lawyers would wear their hats and we'd put a stop to this. And we are making remarkable progress, which I'll get to. But in Canada, no sign companies would work with me. I'm nobody. I had no platform. And so I did the only thing I could do. I had some signs made. And is it right, by the way,
that your billboards, your early billboards, warned that this was the greatest child abuse scandal in modern medicine history?
The first billboard just said, "I love JK Rowling."
Okay, but then the later
and then the first signs I had made that I wear, because it's easier than holding all day. The very first signs also said, "I love JK Rowling." And the first message was, "Gender ideology does not belong in schools." So that was the first one. Because I know that once something's in schools, that's how you change the culture. That's how you indoctrinate an entire generation. This is the same model that has been used throughout history with Lenin and the Bolshevik Revolution, with Mao and the Red Guard. They always want to indoctrinate the kids. This is no different. Psychology never changes. History repeats. And then very shortly after that, my first signs, and it's still the message today, it's my main message, children cannot consent to puberty blockers.
Yes. And so you, over the course of 2021, start going viral because this was quite an interesting concept. There you are, they walking, talking billboard, I guess. And so initially, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think you were traveling all across Canada.
I was stuck in Canada because of COVID. The borders were closed.
But I think in November 2021, you were able to get to the US.
That's right.
For the first time.
That's right.
And that then takes your campaign to a new level. Tell me what happened.
That's correct. You're smart. So yeah,
I've been following your story a long time, actually.
My first trip was to Texas. And right away, Americans that are in this fight, some of them got on a plane and flew just to hang out with me and to support me. And in America, there is a spirit of fighting back.
Yes.
And I think it goes back to 1776 because that country was born out of rebellion. They love their freedom. And when there's a problem, people form organizations and they fight back. So there's a lot more support there. And I just started traveling the US, and then I started traveling the world, and I still, of course, do things in Canada.
Yes.
But
and you came to the UK for the first time in May 2023. What was your response like here?
Is that the first time? Probably. I get a great response everywhere I go, except
from
Brussels.
The people.
Yeah, except Belgium. But I get 90+% support on the street. This is not a controversial message to say that we shouldn't be trying to change the sex of children with drugs and hormones and surgeries.
But see, isn't that so fascinating though, Chris? Because you get 90% support from the people on the street. I have no doubt about that you are an incredibly popular figure with the vast majority of people agreeing with your message. But that is absolutely not how you were portrayed in the mainstream media, right, where the suggestion was that you were, like all of us are derided, an extremist, far right, that
fascist.
This was fascist, that this was a form of discrimination.
Homophobe,
all of that.
Yeah.
So I guess the campaign showed the disconnect between, and I think this is a disconnect that continues on so many levels, and I know you're at Tommy Robinson's rally, I want to talk about that later on in the show actually, but it shows the disconnect so much between what I would describe as the elite class, which includes the political establishment, the mainstream media, and the people.
Yes, so I suppose one of my skills is that I stay very calm in the face of assaults and screaming and all of that. It really doesn't bother me. They're doing me a favor because they are exposing how radical and rude and crazy they are. And if you know nothing about the arguments from either side, from me or them, and I'm calm and professional and polite, and they're awful, well, I'm already winning. So that's powerful. And it's far more powerful to just take the abuse than it is to fight back. Now, if I have to defend myself in a life or death situation, I will, of course. But it's much more powerful just to take the abuse.
It is, but of course, what has happened over the past few weeks, Chris, has had a chilling effect on so many people doing activism like yours. I am, of course, referring to the political assassination of Charlie Kirk, who you could argue was doing quite a similar thing at universities to what you were doing on the streets. And we cannot back away from the fact, and I do want to discuss it in detail, that a lot of the violence that seems to be coming in Western society now is from trans activists. There's a whole load of examples of this, including the shootings in the US. And of course, at the very moment, or moments after Charlie Kirk had spoken about that, was when the fatal shot was fired at him at the Utah University. So I really want to get into this, but can I just ask you first how this impacts you on a personal level as someone who is a street level activist, as someone who is on the ground in the US, where we know there is a high availability of guns, and we know that mentally ill trans extremists are now moving towards taking out their enemies. Has this made you consider at all whether you're going to keep doing what you're doing?
So I'll go to universities more.
Wow.
I've been going to lots of universities. I've been to 50 of them, approximately 40 or 50, because I've always known that's ground zero for all the problems in the West. It's
Big
certainly
time.
And it's certainly ground zero for this trans delusion.
Mm-hmm.
But we cannot allow violence to silence us. So of course I'll try to be safe if I can. I don't have money for security or anything like that. I'm also not Charlie Kirk. That man was on a track to be president one day, and they know it. I knew Charlie Kirk a little bit. I've been on his show a couple times. Actually, when he gave his opening speech at AmFest 2 years ago, he borrowed one of my expressions, which is that there are two sexes, zero genders, and infinite personalities, because that just sums us all up. And he was doing such an amazing job, and he's modeling how to talk to people. We just do it civilly. We need to stop viewing people as enemies and just view them as human beings. And so the mainstream media can say all they want about you're a homophobe or transphobe or whatever. But with the power of social media today, anyone who wants to know who you truly are can just see it for themselves. And I don't worry about what all the haters say. They can write hit pieces about me all day long. I'll post their hit pieces myself just to show how ridiculous they are. But no, we cannot let these people silence us. I've seen varying viewpoints on this, but I think, of course, just like with the Streisand effect, this will result in more people going to universities. Unfortunately, I think the world is the same today as it was yesterday. Political assassinations aren't anything new. They have been more rare in recent times. But people are telling me, Chris, they're getting more violent. They're not, really. I've been assaulted 40-odd times. I had my arm broken back in 2021 by Antifa. It's a monthly occurrence that something happens. So I do need to try to be safe, but I'm not going to stop talking.
But what about specifically the wave of trans violence, specifically trans shooters? Which
that is
now,
on the uptick, yeah.
Yeah, because, I mean, if you look at the tiny proportion of the population that is trans, compare that to the number of shootings, it definitely feels like there is a violent radicalization that is going on within the trans community. And obviously, you're face-to-face with the trans community a lot. Have you noticed that? Do you sense this increasing violence? And what's behind it? Because I've heard lots of debates that a lot of this could be down to the medication. For example, this crazy medication which you've been fighting against could actually be leading to some of this violence.
So there's a lot to this answer. Now, you have young people who are being affirmed with a delusion. They're being affirmed that they are a special class of individual called trans. What trans means, nobody can really tell you. It's really a meaningless title. We're all girls or boys, men or women. And an effeminate man is not a woman. He's a man. He might not be the most masculine man, but he's a man.
100%.
But we have all these people now who are believing that they're trans and that they're oppressed and that people like me are out to get them. We're out to genocide them. So you have these mentally unstable people who are on drugs. We don't know what all these cross-sex hormones are doing to them, but often they're also simultaneously on SSRIs or other medication, or they're doing hard drugs, illegal drugs, etc. And the left is pushing this narrative, they're pushing this propaganda that we're out to get them. So they feel like they're under attack, and these are mentally unstable people. So all these politicians and all these mainstream media folks share some responsibility in the big picture for this environment that they're creating. But they have always been extremely unhinged towards me. They have always tried to silence us by any means possible. And I think that's why it is so much more important to speak up. Because this is ultimately an ideology that's harming our children. And even though the Tavistock has kind of stopped it here in England, we have so much work to do because the ideology itself is still raging, as we've seen just from a few videos this week. And I have a lot more that I haven't even uploaded yet.
Do you believe that being trans is a mental illness?
So I say nobody is trans. And
Or thinking you're trans is a mental illness.
well, what's going on with these people? And if you look at the Cass review, which Dr. Hilary Cass wrote,
Yes. And that's obviously what led to the eventual closure of the Tavistock Clinic.
that's right. So 70% of those kids at the gender clinic here in England had 5 or more mental health comorbidities. So they have borderline personality disorder often, or a mother with BPD. There's an older study that showed 52% of moms had BPD. These are kids overwhelmingly who have autism. These are kids, majority of whom have had sexual abuse. All these things are going together. ADHD, they're cutting, they have eating disorders. They're in state care. More than half of these children had one parent who was missing from their lives. So it's just struggling kids. But now they're being presented with this idea that it's not these struggles, it's not these various mental health problems that are your issue. It's that you were born in the wrong body. You're actually transgender. And they ignore all these other issues and they say, well, you're transgender, so we'll fix that by transitioning you with drugs, hormones, and surgeries. That's not a fix. And what are they doing? They're affirming a lie. They're telling these children that they were born in the wrong body. How abusive is that, Dan?
Oh, I know. I mean, honestly, Chris, one of the most painful interviews I have ever conducted is with Cara Bell, who some people might know. She's, you know, the young woman who took the Tavistock Clinic to court. And, I mean, she won, she lost, but eventually in the end, she won. But she will never get her body back. She'll never get her voice back. She'll never be the woman she wanted to be. And this was someone who needed a different type of help. Do you know what I mean? And
she'd had some abuse.
It's very devastating.
Yeah, there's always something going on. There's abuse, there's sexual abuse, there's trauma, there's whatever. And there's same-sex attraction.
Yes.
So you touched on this earlier. If you were growing up today...
about sexuality, yes.
Right, and if you were growing up today, maybe some ideologue would come along and say you're trans. Well...
Oh, without any doubt.
Interestingly, if we look at all of the older studies before they started giving these kids these drugs, so gender dysphoria, or gender identity disorder as it used to be called, might have affected 1 out of 30,000. Something like that. And it was mostly boys. Effeminate little boys from a really young age. And all these studies show the same results, that when they went through puberty, 80 to 90% of them grew out of it. Their gender dysphoria went away.
Yes.
The cure for gender dysphoria, and this is so important, the cure was puberty.
Which is what the drugs block.
Which they now block the cure. And a majority of those kids grew up to be same-sex attracted.
I'm interested to know how you think the culture war has moved on this issue in the US, because I think we can probably sit here and agree that most normal people, and the majority opinion now, is certainly that your campaign, when it comes to children, has been successful, right? People hate the idea of giving young kids these puberty blockers. And also the other campaign, which has been incredibly successful, led by Sharon Davies here in this country, is about women's sport, something I am hugely passionate about. I am a great advocate for women's sport. And I think people have realized that continuing this mad ideology risked destroying women's sport. Where there is absolutely no agreement and the culture war rages is over people like Dylan Mulvaney, who, in my view, is taking the piss, taking the mickey out of what it means to be a woman. A very obviously gay man who saw a grift, wanted to make money, probably a little bit mentally ill, I would imagine, looking at the way that he's
to do what you're
acted.
doing.
Yeah. And also going through, I mean, no surgical procedure, by the way. And again, I think sometimes we've got to be pretty graphic on this, as grim as it is. You know, penis intact, but maybe like a bit of the Adam's apple removed. I mean, all of that leans towards a mental illness. However, this is where the culture war still rages, because there'll be a lot of people who say, Chris, I'm being offensive for not describing Dylan Mulvaney using the pronouns that he prefers to use, that I should be referring to him as she, her. And what's interesting is my development on this is quite similar to that of Megyn Kelly, who's been very open about this. And I believe you've been on her show. Yeah. I've seen you on there before, and she's become a real advocate on this issue. But a bit like me to begin with, it was like, well, I don't really believe in any of this. But okay, if Caitlyn Jenner, someone who I'm very fond of and who I've had on my show lots, wants to be called she, what harm is it? So can you just talk me through like where the culture war stands now and how you feel about this whole debate over the pronouns and what respect we should have for how people want to be identified?
So when you call a man a woman, you're lying. When you give a man female pronouns, she, her, you're lying.
So you say no under any circumstances?
Absolutely not.
So Caitlyn Jenner is a he?
Of course he is. He's a man. And the pronouns for men are he and him. Now, he can dress however he wants.
And you'll call him Caitlyn, but not a she?
Sure. People can change their name.
And dress as a woman?
He can wear a dress. Sure. I'm not out here bashing people for wearing dresses. No. Not my cup of tea.
Yeah.
But he's not a woman. And I don't like the term trans woman either, because the word woman should only be used when referring to a woman, not referring to men in any context.
Well, indeed, and the problem with the trans woman thing is then you get the crazy lefty saying, I'm a cis woman. Oh my God, I hate that term more than anything. Sorry, go on. It just really annoys me.
But the pronouns, it really is a gateway to this whole ideology. As soon as you say, well, just be kind, just use the pronouns, what are you doing? You're lending legitimacy to a cultish movement, a quasi-religious movement that teaches that children are born in the wrong bodies, that some of us are born in the wrong bodies, that some of us are this alternate state called transgender. No one can tell you what it really means to be transgender unless they get to these regressive and sexist stereotypes. But you're lending legitimacy to this. You are saying the emperor is clothed. You're saying the naked emperor actually has this beautiful, magnificent golden robe. Isn't it glorious? You're affirming a delusion is what you're doing. And as soon as you do that, you lend legitimacy to an ideology which spreads via social contagion, because people are very vulnerable. The human mind is easily manipulated. And as soon as you put an idea out there that this exists and this is true, other people will grasp onto it and they'll start to do it too. And that's what we're seeing. That's why we have this explosion. This wasn't a thing when I was growing up.
No, absolutely not. But then Dylan Mulvaney, I guess you could argue, maybe did as much good as a campaign like yours, because actually people saw, no, this is offensive to women. He's putting on some lipstick. Exactly. Yeah. And actually, being a woman isn't about putting on some lipstick, dyeing your hair, even getting rid of your Adam's apple. That doesn't make you a woman. So do you think that actually maybe had the opposite effect of what trans activists hoped that it would? Did you notice a difference after Dylan Mulvaney? Because I sort of viewed that as one of those red lines, and it was sort of crossed in a way. It was at the same time as Leah Thomas, which is another one of those red lines. And Riley Gaines obviously became a real hero in the same way that Sharon Davies had here in the United Kingdom. She was sort of making the fight in the US. It was almost felt like there were those red lines where maybe some people who in the past had been tolerant and been on the Be Kind bandwagon sort of thought, well, actually, no, because what you're doing now is making a mockery of women. Dylan Mulvaney, all of that ridiculous camp acting, gay man acting, and Leah Thomas, getting his penis out in front of Riley Gaines in the changing room.
Yeah, and my friend Paula Scanlon, who was on the same swim team as him at UPenn, and I think they had something like 9 practices a week. So in and out of the changing room, it's 18 times a week. This man's changing in front of them. Look, he knows that's wrong. He knows he's intruding on their privacy. He knows he's upsetting them, and he does it anyway. No decent person does that. And so in the overall trans umbrella, you have these 3 typographies. You have these middle-aged men with a paraphilia or a sexual perversion called autogynephilia. This breaks down to the 3 root words, auto, gyno, and philia, which are self, woman, love. They get aroused by the idea of being a woman and getting into their spaces.
So for some trans people, you're saying that there is a sexual motivation behind what they're doing?
100%. Now, I don't call them trans people, and I'm just such a stickler on this.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if it's annoying. I just call them men because that's what they are. And I think
So
we need
for
to get back to reality.
So with some men dressing up as women?
Yeah.
That's
For some of them, it's a sexual thing. And then you get the...
For all or for some?
For some. For people like Dylan Mulvaney, you have these hyper gay individuals. They're not always like him. I mean, he's a narcissist and all that too. But you can read some of the stories of these detransitioners where you have a 25-year-old gay man who was convinced as a youngster that he was trans. And so he was put on puberty blockers. And maybe he had sex reassignment surgery done as well, which doesn't reassign sex, but what it does is it castrates him and they invert his penis. And I don't want to get too graphic here, but for the boys who were on puberty blockers, they don't have enough tissue to do that surgery. So what they'll do is they'll cut out some of their colon or some of their peritoneum, their abdominal lining, to do the surgery. I mean, we're talking about really crazy stuff here.
It's just horrendous.
But you get some of these young men who maybe their family didn't approve of them being gay, and so they believed they were trans, or this society just got a hold of them, this cultish movement got a hold of them, and they believed they were trans, when really they're just gay. And now their bodies have been harmed for life when they would have been just fine and grown up to be
totally mutilated,
totally fine gay men. So you get that as well. You have this gay component where it's conversion therapy of gays, just like in Iran, where you can't be gay, but it's the number 2 country in the world for sex reassignment surgery.
Trans ideology is one of the most homophobic ideologies in the world.
100%.
And it's always something that I've been acutely aware of. But I guess what's been so interesting over the past few years is that I used to live in a naivety because this wasn't a big deal. You know, it wasn't something that was happening very often. And so I think, like a lot of people, when I was growing up, I assumed that anyone who described themselves as trans, number one, had gone through the gender reassignment surgery. I mean, it was a huge shock to me when I learned a few years ago, no. The vast majority of trans women have penises. I think that was a huge wake-up call for a lot of people. But secondly, that, as you say, the surgery is so grim on so many levels, and actually something that really no one should be putting themselves through unless they really want. I mean, it reminds me of, like this guy recently in the United Kingdom who ended up in jail because he was a surgeon and he chose to get his own legs amputated for sexual gratification. Now, that's a crime. So I do think sometimes we've really got to think about, even though it is it's grim, it's difficult to discuss. Of course, we don't want to be too graphic. Of course, we don't. But sometimes it is important to think about some of the practicalities of this and realize why it's actually a kind thing not wanting to put someone through this, especially not wanting to. I mean, I'm a freedom of choice guy, but no one who is a young person or a teenager or hasn't gone through puberty should be wanting to have themselves put through something which is, in a lot of ways, bodily mutilation, which can never be reversed.
Yeah, the Hippocratic Oath is first, do no harm. Now, doctors aren't just drug dealers and order takers, where you come through the drive-thru and say, I'd like a double mastectomy, please. In the United States, you can book your double mastectomy for your teenage self over the phone.
Yeah.
Having never spoken with a doctor over telehealth. And that's not medicine.
No.
So we have, you have these men with this paraphilia, this sexual perversion. They're otherwise straight, usually. And then you have these gay people and a lot of lesbians as well who are being convinced that because they're more masculine that they must be trans, and they're being harmed. And they're being put on testosterone in doses which obviously don't belong in their body. And these are causing cancers and heart disease. The WPATH files that were released last year, WPATH is the World Professional Association for Transgender Health. They write the standards of care that all these gender clinics around the world claim to follow. But they admit in their private dialogue and in their private videos and Zoom calls that children can't consent to these procedures, that if you try to talk to a 12-year-old about preserving fertility, they go, ooh, babies, gross. It's like talking to a blank wall. Daniel Metzger, the endocrinologist at My Children's Hospital in British Columbia, says. And he also says he follows these kids into their 20s. They come back for follow-up, and now they're 25 and they want to have a family. But they can't.
Late. It's too late.
And he says so callously, yeah, the dog's not doing it for you, is it? As though having a dog is a replacement for having your own family. But they keep doing it to these kids anyway. So the whole thing is madness. And you spoke of these people with getting their legs cut off. Yes, most medical bodies have put a stop to that. Although I did sit on a panel 2 weeks ago at a conference next to a doctor who told me she was in the room when a surgeon signed off on cutting off a man's healthy leg. That's a condition called apotemnophilia.
Yeah.
So we can all acknowledge that that's a mental illness.
Exactly. No one would think that's normal. So
But
why
somehow
isn't
cutting
it-
off the breast of a 14-year-old is normal?
Yeah, exactly. Why is that normal and why is that encouraged? Now, you were first inspired by that JK Rowling billboard. It's fascinating, her story, in a lot of ways, because she's obviously the leader, I guess, of the movement internationally, but it has come at great cost to her. And it's very interesting because obviously this is politically a woman, so she's not on my side of the fence, right? So even though I have so much respect for what JK Rowling has now done, previously she was very anti-Brexit. You know, there are a lot of things where she was very much on what I would describe as the left of British politics. A lot of those left-right divides have crumbled over this issue because, of course, I think she realised, even though she hasn't come to the right of politics, which I think is a mistake, she realised that the people who would support her and the people who actually saw sense on this issue were virtually all from the right of politics. But I wonder what you make of JK Rowling's cancellation, especially in America, because, of course, all of those Hollywood stars, all of those people who she made famous, right? Little brats, I call them, you know, Emma
That's right.
Watson, Daniel Radcliffe, Eddie Redmayne, Rupert Grint, a whole load of others who are still taking the coin for this new Harry Potter TV series, sorry, all feel and find it necessary to attack her even to this day.
Yeah, it's totally absurd. Even if you disagree with someone, when they make you a millionaire, you might want to just stay quiet a little bit.
And especially when she's like saying, I'm talking out on this because I was abused. You know, like, it's insane to me that they would make this woman who they respected, as you say, she made them a millionaire, but it's just to be on the right side of the woke mob.
Yeah, so again, I think it is important to use the analogy of this being a cult. These kids are indoctrinated. And I call them kids. They're older now, but yeah, they are in this environment where they're surrounded by people pushing this. And what's been really successful from the left is they push that this is an LGBT community or a 2S LGBTQIA plus community. Just throw every letter you can think of.
And what's that? One of those stands for like spirit animals.
Two-spirit. So they tell us that indigenous communities always had transgender people, even though a white academic made up this term in 1990 in Winnipeg. But those are just a bunch of letters. What we're going to call an asexual person, a person with a low sex drive, an oppressed minority now. But the real key here is those 4 letters, LGBT. And so the gay rights movement happened pretty much all across the West. By 2015, gay rights had been won. And then all of these NGOs, who are often funded by leftist governments, with billions of dollars, the next movement was trans rights. And they've conflated trans with gay. And that buys them a lot of goodwill. And that enables them to shut a lot of people up.
Yes.
Because, as they say about me, they'll say I'm a homophobe, just like someone wrote in the media this week. I'm out here telling the truth about the most homophobic movement in Western history. One that is physically sterilizing people who would just grow up to be gay. But it's not just that, it's autistic kids and all sorts of things. But those 4 letters strike fear in the hearts of men, and they don't want to say anything. So the key here is to educate people. Because once they're educated and they know how to talk about it and they get the simple talking points, they get more brave and they do start to speak up and they learn more about this. And that's the formula for winning. And it's working, and we're winning all over the world.
Is it a left-right issue?
Yes, it is. Now, I already can hear the comments online. Chris, I'm a leftist and I completely agree with you. Of course you do. A lot of leftists do agree. But this is pushed entirely by leftist political parties, NGOs, which are dominated by radical leftists. The radical left, the far left, has captured the entire left, and the moderates don't have a voice anymore. Because if any of them speak up, they get canceled by their own side. So all these NGOs and all these political parties are run by the most radical among them. This is why the Democrats insist on dying on this hill. In the last presidential election, the number one issue for swing voters, who could have gone either way, it wasn't the economy, it wasn't immigration or the border, it was transgender insanity that caused them to vote for Trump. So this is a huge winning issue for any truth teller, for conservative parties, for just normal people who are running in the political arena. When you condemn this child abuse, when you say that men don't belong in women's sports and we shouldn't be chemically castrating children, you don't need to worry about a thing. You'll never lose a single conservative vote. You'll pick up tons in the middle, and you'll pick up a lot on the left as well.
But Chris, why have corporates, for example, not realized how toxic going along with this ideology is? I mean, I don't know if you heard of the recent example at M&S here, which is, the supermarket, the department store for the middle class in the United Kingdom. Yet it has, for a very long time, held on to this extreme gender ideology of allowing men into female changing rooms. Even this year, that is happening.
Yes, so all these big corporations have been captured. So there's a lot to this. In America, for example, it was the Human Rights Campaign. They get these equality scores associated with their...
Stonewall over here.
Yeah, and they get... Right, same thing. So you have to go along with all of these leftist ideologies, or else you get a bad score, which can affect your ability to raise money or whatever. But these HR departments are all captured by the far left ideologies because these people all go through university or they're getting indoctrinated. And this is really capturing the young women, especially because it preys on their natural empathy and their nurturing nature. And they're told that kids are going to kill themselves if you don't transition them. And they're taught that trans women are women. And the women's studies classes, which are now called gender studies classes, all teach that gender is a social construct and that being a man or a woman is just a feeling.
Do you believe in gender?
No, there's no such thing as gender. We used it as a synonym for sex.
Biological sexes.
That's right. You're a man if you do or did or will or would, if not for genetic or developmental abnormalities, produce sperm. And you're a woman if you're designed to produce eggs. That's it. I had this conversation with a gentleman earlier today, and he said when he closes his eyes, he feels like, and he thinks about, himself and just ignores his body, he feels like a man. Well, being a man isn't a feeling. What he's really saying is he feels masculine. Great. Well, if you're an effeminate male, you're still a man. And we need to get back to reality. Go ahead and present yourself however you like. You're either a man or a woman. And this concept that our gender is a feeling is producing this craze where millions of people across the globe now say they feel like the opposite sex.
And of course, the overreach, as you rightly point out, has divided the so-called gay community forever, although you're not allowed to call it the gay community anymore, right. Are you? I mean, that's right. What I thought that I was maybe a part of, although I've never really been big into that. But I certainly never bought into the LGBT stuff, certainly not the QIA plus stuff. Right. But unfortunately, what it's done is smash a community that maybe did exist in some way forever, because, of course, the people, the extremists, the trans extremists, and as you say, for a lot of them, there is a financial motivation to keep this sort of grievance going because it is a grift industry, will say there's no LGB without the T. Now, as a gay man, I view it very differently. As you point out, we don't need to fight for something that we already have. And right. That is the problem. I think there are a lot of people who wanted to keep the victimization up. And I look at my career and what I've done in my career. Never, ever did I use myself as some type of victim or play the victim or give myself a victimhood status because of my sexuality. That means, certainly in the West and in the United Kingdom at least, it's no longer an issue. No one gives a damn. And so what is, I guess, pretty heartbreaking for people who did believe that there's a community of some form is that it's over now, because the trans overreach has actually caused the lesbian, gay, bisexual community to be at war with itself.
That's right. And sometimes I'll go into the gay communities. Not to be a provocateur, people think that I'm trying to have conversations. For me, this is like fishing. I stand there quietly and I wait for someone to come up to me. And if they want to talk, I talk. But it is important for me to go into some of these communities sometimes because they need to have these conversations more than anyone. Because there's a lot of confusion. And I get a huge split. Sometimes I'll get gay men arguing with gay men, and that's really powerful in helping to educate people, to be honest. But they need to understand what this transgenderism is all about. It's all about stereotypes, and that's it. And it is harming the gay community. A lot of them just have a blind spot where they don't realize it. I think with a lot of the gay men in particular, maybe when they were younger, they were more effeminate. They might have been bullied. They didn't fit in. And then they discovered themselves and got comfortable. Now they see so-called trans kids as the same sort of thing. They're not fitting in. They feel like misfits. They might get bullied. So just leave them alone. That's kind of their opinion. But they haven't put the thought into it that these are a lot of kids that were just like them when they were little. And now they're not being given the opportunity to grow up with their bodies intact. And that's totally insane.
Were you worried about travelling to the United Kingdom for this rally after the arrest of Graham Linehan, the Father Ted creator, for 3 posts? He's just like you, a dad, a man who has been very much on the women's side of this argument. People would describe him as anti-trans. He's an Irish citizen who posted these tweets, or what are we meant to say now, posts on X, when he was in the United States of America, where he is now living, in part because he's been driven out of this country by violent, radical trans extremists. He then arrives at Heathrow Airport, is arrested by 5 armed police officers for 3 tweets. I mean, how on earth can you feel safe in this country as a trans activist after that?
Yeah, as a pro-child advocate. So not quite sure how that works. We got an Irishman writing a post in America, getting arrested in Britain. This is total madness, but across the world, we see similar laws going into effect where they're trying to censor the entire world. I just won a freedom of speech case against the Australian government a few months ago.
Yeah, Australia's been crazy with you, hasn't it? You were banned, I think, from carrying your billboard in Brisbane?
Yeah. So let me back up just a little. Over a year ago, I wrote a post calling a woman a woman. Her name's Teddy Cook. She runs one of their equality organizations in Australia. She's now saying that she's a man. She's had a double mastectomy. She's on testosterone. She wants taxpayer-funded childhood sex changes. She advocates for illicit drugs for trans-identified people during sex. She talks about orgies. She posted a picture of a dog sodomizing a man. This is a radical queer theorist. So naturally, she was appointed to the World Health Organization.
Obviously.
To write healthcare policy for kids and adults struggling with trans identification. So I criticized that, and I called her a woman because she is. And Australia's e-safety commissioner deemed that to be cyber abuse. They have an e-safety commissioner. So
I'm going mad. I mean, it's bad here.
So I'm a Canadian who published a Daily Mail article from Britain on an American platform, and an Australian bureaucrat censored it across the whole world, or they would fine X $800,000. So I appealed that. Elon also appealed it. We each had our own sets of lawyers, and we won spectacularly. But it's the same thing in Britain going on. And it's the same thing with the Digital Services Act in Europe.
But with Graham Linehan, though, this is a criminal arrest.
Right. So,
I mean, police who are literally allowing absolute lawlessness on the streets of London. I mean, we saw it with you in that video at the top of the show where you were attacked by an Antifa extremist with an ice cream. Okay, fine. It wasn't acid, but the police didn't give a damn. They didn't even bother to investigate, didn't bother to chase him. But my God, you post a so-called anti-trans tweet and they're going to turn up at the airport.
Right.
It's nuts.
Yeah, they wouldn't even try to arrest that guy the other day. And yes, it's not the worst thing in the world, smashing a tub of ice cream on my head, but it's a common assault.
Exactly, and it could
And
be.
those people should face the ramifications for that, or else you encourage more of that behavior.
Yeah.
But to answer your original question, I'm not worried about UK authorities doing anything to me. In fact, I welcome it because I use it as an opportunity to expose their
Yes.
overzealous, censorious nature, and it's extremely powerful. And I'm careful with my words too. Like it would be hard to find any of my posts where you have a legitimate means
Yes.
to criminally charge me, but I welcome any authorities who want to get you act like authoritarians, like the people in Belgium recently who threw me in jail with my friend Lois McClatchy-Miller from ADF International.
Absolutely nuts. Last week, though, you did attend the Tommy Robinson Uniting the Kingdom rally. Your sign read, Dad, noun, a human male who protects his kids from gender ideology. Talk to me about your decision to be at the rally, and presumably you know Tommy Robinson is a firebrand over here, a lightning rod. Why was it important for you to be there?
So for me, a guy from Canada, what I see is a man who's been passionate about raising awareness about rape gangs harming hundreds of thousands of British girls. And so that's admirable. And nobody's perfect, so I'm not going to sit here and judge Tommy for any of the sins of his past, just as I would hope someone wouldn't judge me for the sins of my pasts. But we're all trying to do good in this world. We're trying to bring awareness to grave harm that's being done to children. And I was scheduled to speak yesterday. Unfortunately, the police shut down that rally before I got up there. Well, that's okay. These things happen.
But did you still find it a positive experience, a good vibe, patriotic?
Okay, so I went to the trucker convoy, the Freedom Convoy in Ottawa, the first 2 weekends. This and that were pretty much on par. You can't find a more beautiful scene than hundreds of thousands of peaceful patriots exercising their freedom of speech. And it was a very peaceful event. It was beautiful. The mainstream media wants to paint them as fascists or far right or whatever. I mean, come on, give me a break. There's a bunch of moms and dads out there carrying their kids on their shoulders, and they have a legitimate grievance, which the media and which the government have ignored for years. And that is that they are bringing people into the country who are harming kids. And from purely a risk management angle. I used to be in finance, investments, and insurance. If a person had a DUI 5 years ago, they would not be eligible for life insurance. They want at least 10 years away from that DUI. That's risk management. We are bringing in, all across the West, hundreds of thousands of people who are 10, 20, 30 times more likely to rape children. So what would you do from a risk management angle? You would just say, no, we shouldn't be bringing them in. It's too much risk. You're not bringing in people who are making your country better. A lot of them are reliant on social services. This isn't about hate. This is about practicality. This is about truth. This is about making your country better, not making your country worse. And the government are the government of Great Britain. They are not the government of Pakistan or Somalia or Afghanistan.
Very well put. Very well put. Well, it was absolutely brilliant for you to be here, both at Outspoken, but also in the United Kingdom and at the rally, because, I mean, I still think we've got a long way to go. Remember, we've got a radical left government, a globalist government, and there are very disturbing things happening here in the United Kingdom. So we very, very much appreciate it when people like you turn your attention to some of the problems here, like Elon Musk has, actually.
Thank
so
you.
Billboard Chris. And of course, you are at billboardchris.com, aren't you, for people who want more information about your work?
So yeah, and I've got a new website. I opened a nonprofit in the US.
Oh, great. What's
so
that?
WeSpeakTruth.com.
WeSpeakTruth.com.
That's tax deductible to Americans if they want to donate. But on social media and on YouTube, for those watching, please subscribe to me at Billboard Chris on YouTube.
Billboard Chris. It's very simple to remember. Billboard Chris.
Thank you.
So brilliant to have you on Outspoken today. Thank you so much. A long time coming. I've been wanting to speak to Billboard Chris, so that was amazing. And thank you so much for your company today. No Royal Uncancelled after show, of course, because I am still in Australia. But don't worry, I am back with you live on Monday. The after show returns then, as does Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. So if you want to get first access to that, please do sign up to my Substack. The address, www.outspoken.live. Substack is a free speech platform, so it's a really good place for me, protected from big tech cancellation and lawfare over there. And I would love you to be part of it if you support what we are doing here on Outspoken. www.outspoken.live. You can subscribe completely for free, by the way, on Substack, and you join the movement, the Outspoken movement. You can also subscribe for free to our podcast now, Dan Wootton Outspoken podcast, which is available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I'd really appreciate it if you rate and review. That really helps us out. And special show tomorrow, my live appearance with the New Culture Forum, where I'm making some big revelations. So I do hope to see you then, 5 p.m. UK time, midday Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. And remember, I'll always keep fighting for you.